Hello, BookTube. Back again with another reading from uh, Literary Life. This is Maze for Magazines. This was Sean D. Steadfast pointed out that this magazine was printed in 1889 in Cleveland. A few years later, it moved to Chicago and it finished publication in 1903. And I thank Sean D. Steadfast for that information. So what I want to do is there's read the typical American genius, which is on page 21 here. So I gotta turn to page 21 and read that one. Uh, typical American genius, the poetry and personality of Ella Wheeler Wilcox by Rodney Blake. Ella Wheeler Wilcox was a poet and a novelist, and she is famous for the poem called Solitude. And the first couple lines go, it's probably very familiar to a lot of people. It goes, laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone, for the same old earth must borrow its mirth, but it has trouble enough of its own. That comes from the poem called titled Solitude. She sent that in to the New York Sun and received $5 for that interest. But here we go. Typical American genius of poetry and personality of Ella Wheeler Wilcox. There can be no greater mistake than to present Ella Wheeler Wilcox as a local figure, either as a young poet of the West or as a happy wife, Miss Wilcox in a charming New England home. Why should there be specification of Wisconsin as her birthplace and Connecticut as her present habitation? Hers is a genius that belongs to all tribes and all times, as well try to regulate the notes of the songbird to the north and south or east and or west, as measure the music of her inspiration by polar coordinates. With all who have read poems of passion, there is an eager desire to see the author. Is she beautiful? She has not a face to be analyzed by the canons of strict formula, but is she beautiful? Well, as the sun is beautiful because in the presence there is light and heat, or as the stars are beautiful when they sparkle, or as the moon is beautiful when it's soft and mellow and invites delicious dreams. Now look you upon the picture, and say it is filled with painter's fancy. A bizarre woman exhaling an atmosphere of rosary warmth. She stands in her peerless bloom under the tender lamplight. There is not the look of lineage upon her beautiful face, simply that of individual distinctiveness. A cream white gown of aesthetic genre sweeps the floor in voluptuous folds. A full Grecian drapery fastened at the right shoulder falls over the back in loose plans curving downward below the waist and caught up near the left hip. The waist of the costume is cut to disclose the bosom, which every breath swells with gentle undulations, and which sheds a warmth and luster like a blaze of incandescence. Her arms are long, large, round, white, and firm. They are exposed to the shoulder. Over a head of classic contour, its banded hair that shines like tangled filaments of copper and bronze, and beneath a square white forehead that even might stir to mutiny the green devils of envy in Psyche's heart, glistens eyes at this same golden red hue. Her chin is aggressive, denoting power and pride. Her mouth is crimson in color, quivering and outline and indicates passion of an intense and lofty type. This is one picturesque phase of this female kaleidoscope, but it will serve. Infinitely various are as expressions of the face and form are the apparel like the poetry of this woman, partakes of the individuality of Ella Wheeler Wilcox. She sits, the plainancy of her limbs and the clinging folds of her garments blend with the upholstering of her couch like something from the chisel of Danneker. She speaks. Her face lights with radiance to which the passion of her poetry is pale. The vibrations of her voice are more thrilling than the melody of her verse, and her eyes blaze and beam in animation or in repose. Smile gently, earnestly, as though they beheld a vision of an unwritten sonnet. Her speech is that of exuberant feeling. Her articulation is easy, yet marked by well considered deliberation. Her tones are rich and low, and tremulous. She wears love about her like a shining robe, so all who come within its lustrous and fragrant circles have a new sense of exhilaration. While, quote, poems of passion, end of quote, obtain a vogue far beyond any other work of Ella Wheeler Wilcox, it is neither the best manifestation of her poetic versatility nor her versifying genius. It is certainly the strongest and most original poetic expression of American freedom and vigor that has come from a woman. She has all the sensuous of Swinburne and the miniature-like delicacy of Rossetti without the gross indecency of Whitman. A soul can consume in the wildest love burnings, in the thirst languishing and love yearnings, and yet the victim finds no ecstasy in ribald language significant of unclean conditions of the body. The reason this little volume met with Greece a censor of celebrity in a cell that her former and equal murderous collections failed to stir. Sorry about that. Probably messed that word up. Collections failed to stir simply because the popular eye read, quote, the poems of passion, end of quote, lascivious lyrics, and the vulgar mind can see, quote, the poems of passion, end of quote, to be salacious songs. Any degree of erotic tributes may be portrayed in as they appear under the very proper domestic misnomer, quote, love, end quote. They are acceptable to rigid moralists. But as when the emotions described are apotheosized from love and the passion, that these overly prudish or overly prudent imaginations are filled with noxious vapors. These superabundant and negatively dialectic class do not, excuse me, I'm sorry about that, do not regulate that when the tender sympathies are sufficiently intensified to become passion, it is not without the element of suffering, self-sacrifice, sustained devotion, rapturous anguish, and all that makes martyrdom sublime. It is the old story of minds too limited to hold any but one of the many meanings of certain comprehensive terms, and that one the most used and illest abused. To these dust sealed and falsely fatuous nature's passion with its grand mental conditions which distinguish it from mere emotion seeking gratification in emotion will ever remain lasciviousness. Lasciviousness with flexibility of purpose, wanton desire, and appetite for debauchery. Nothing but lasciviousness till the crack of doom. Of the several poems which excite the censorious cynicism of the public tongue, none can be found to contain a word or sentiment betokening lust or the promiscuous longing. They are, they are poems of passion in the fullest, the, the broadest, the highest acceptation of the term. Quote, ad finium, end of quote, is one of the finest expressions of intense and ideal devotion in the English language. It illustrates amorous sensibility at white heat combined with all the grandest moral conditions, practices, and sentiments. In the voice of, quote, ad finium, end of quote, there is the utterance of love so pervaded that it scorches the soul with its burning breath so absolutely that the joys of heaven or the terrors of hell are powerless to change it, so sacrificing that the transports of paradise and the supernatural glory of the ivory throne would be a trivial price for the restored blisses of a comrade love. Excuse me, I just lost my place. Okay. Yet the mind of, quote, ad finium, end of quote, is sufficiently strong to crush this love because it's ill-starred affection that shows nothing but despair. And the heart of, quote, ad finium, end of quote, remains true with the maddening regret ever strumming upon its tender chords. The essence of text of, quote, ad finium, end of quote, are not love of love, but love of the lover. Again, in, quote, communism, end of quote, we have accurate rendering of passion, where the highest intellectual faculty, king of reason, who sways the scepter of thought and truth, triumphs over the violent emotive instincts. These, with a few subjoined forms, are those which call forth a ridiculous fusillade of abuse and developed the tendency of ignorant and malevolent natures to repeat attraction. Quote, Delilah, end of quote, is an reminiscent rendition of scriptural subjects. Quote, the farewell of Clarimon, end of quote, is satirical translation of Theophile Gaunter's modern, quote, Abelard and Heloise, end of quote. Quote, conversion, end of quote, is an exemplification of the frequent fact of a man who finds more religious feeling and belief in morality in the holy ordure inspired by a sweet woman than in logical formula or pictured resplendence of the gates of pearl. Just a moment, I take a drink here. All the accusation of sentimental trash and liberal verse and moral theory this poetic matter must expiate. And mark you, not one syllable of oliloquy for Guido or Beppo, the two little poems which do most of all contain a favor of supportive fancy. What a generous irony is there in the popular impression. Ella Wheeler Wilcox's inspiration is at first hand from life. She neither bathes herself in scriptural dews nor basks she in classic fires. Of exuberant spirit, she is endued with the Hellenistic feeling of nature. The clairvoyance of genius gives her a clear-sighted power beyond the shams and hypocrisies of life, and her vile mousse and posy is a tonic to energize an enfeebled culture. To follow in some ways the chronological order of her work, we find there broadly indicate stages of mental transition as well as distinctive plans of genius, but from the early temperance verse, drops of water to shells and marine and other poems on up through the peaceful valleys of devotional poems to a broad blaze of withering heights of poems of passion. There's always manifest melodious rhythm, creative talent, and universal harmony of expression and theme. She has a rare quality called ideality, which seems ever drawing its happy victims upward. Her religion is a Christ-like feeling that is life, an external soul which breathes in all the airs of heaven, which is taught by the life of every living thing, and which throbs in the palpitation stars above. The divinity that dwells within has been the guide of her most lasting efforts. By this universal sympathy, she has swept with fervent feeling the entire gamut of human emotions. The public loses sight of the fact that the most realistic portrayals of the dramatic and poetic artist emanate from an aching heart for unfound joys, and not from the excess of easy egotism and contented sensualism. Ella Wheeler Wilcox holds a high standard of friendship between women. Her friends' faults are sacred to her, lavished in her praise, lenient in her prejudices, the cruel envies and the narrow judgment of her sex towards one another are depressing to her naturally boundary spirit. She loves warm hearts better than cold culture, yet at the full measure, of experience with incompassionate humankind, she is unattained by either suspicion or bitterness. In society, she is a Bonnie Viviet. It's Italian. It's a Latin. Excuse me. Viviet, yes, and apparently in the congenial element. So that was a typical American genius, a poetry and personality. Ella Wheeler Wilcox. I think I'll keep this because I might need some of the words for Scrabble. And next, I see you, I'll read Washington Irving in his description of an English Christmas. Thank you for watching BookTube, and take care.